If in the previous video, the Houthis made a major mistake by mistakenly attacking a US helicopter, then in this video, they escalate further, launching 11 of their most brutal missiles at a US aircraft carrier. And what happened next will be revealed right now. It began with a nightmare no one saw coming, 7:24 a.m. And the sky over the Red Sea tore open. Not from thunder, but from steel. 11 deadly objects screamed through the air. Missiles, UAVs, and raw fury striking a US aircraft carrier without warning. No flags. No speeches, only the cold silence of death. And the ruthless speed of impact. In an age where enemies lurk in the shadows, danger no longer knocks. It drives straight through the heart. Quiet morning had become a storm of war. And so, the morning light was just a disguise. The world had no idea what had just begun. The Red Sea lay calm under the April sun, as if peace still reigned. Aboard the $13 billion USS Harry S. Truman, sailors went about their daily routines. Inspecting aircraft, exchanging yawns and casual greetings. But no one knew that in just a few minutes, they would be staring down a nightmare of blazing steel and smoke, where every second could mean the difference between life and death. There's much more to uncover. Watch until the end. At that moment, peace shattered into pieces. 0724. Sirens screamed. And the radar lit up in blood-red flashes. 11 incoming threats from multiple directions. 6 cruise missiles, 2 ballistic missiles, and 3 UAVs. This wasn't random. They were programmed, synchronized for a coordinated strike. The command center erupted into a whirlwind of orders and data. But beneath the urgency was a chilling realization. This was a meticulously planned assault, not a stray shot. And the target was the ultimate symbol of American power. And then they struck like phantoms. Missiles launched from Yemen's rugged terrain, soaring before plunging like deadly arrows. Some climbed high, then dove vertically. Others skimmed the sea surface, slipping beneath radar detection. The UAVs were small, fast, and cheap, not meant to destroy, but to confuse, to scramble the defense systems. This wasn't just a military strike, it was a message. A small, smart, well-armed rebel group could land a stinging blow on the symbol of American naval dominance. But the strike wasn't aimed at Truman alone. A wave of terror rippled through the escort formation. Urgent reports confirmed 3 other ships were hit simultaneously. A destroyer, a cruiser, and even a critical supply vessel. This was no longer a warning. It was a declaration of war. A small force was attempting the unthinkable, to shatter America's ironclad defense ring with 11 deadly arrows. The next, it had become a brutal battlefield. In that heart-stopping moment, one wrong decision could plunge the entire fleet into flames. The radar on USS Truman lit up with enemy markers. The defense crew quickly realized this wasn't a random volley, but a pre-arranged web of death. Each projectile had its own speed, altitude, and trajectory, coordinated with terrifying precision. A digital nightmare was unfolding over the deck, and the Americans knew. They were facing a new kind of warfare. And then, the terrifying truth became clear. This was an entirely new form of warfare, where ghosts flew just above the sea. The 6 cruise missiles were identified as Quds 4s, an Iranian design, gliding low over the water like shadows. They evaded radar, hiding beneath the sound of waves. Unlike traditional missiles, they didn't soar. They slithered, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't about intimidation anymore. They were launched to kill. And they chose the most vulnerable moment of American readiness. The nightmare wasn't over. 2 ballistic missiles came crashing down from the upper skies like thunderous warhammers. If the Quds 4s were stealthy daggers, these were sledgehammers falling from the heavens. A simultaneous strike from above and below, a do-or-die test for America's defense systems. And as if pouring fuel on the fire, 3 micro-UAVs swarmed in. These poor man's planes weren't built to destroy, just to distract. And that, more than anything, was what made the whole attack so terrifying. But accidents still happened. When Truman made a sharp, evasive maneuver to dodge a ballistic missile, an FA-18E Super Hornet slipped and plunged off the deck. No one was in the cockpit. But the moment that jet vanished beneath the waves, the entire crew felt their hearts sink. It wasn't about losing equipment. It was a brutal reminder. Even without a direct hit, war takes its toll. And sometimes, the greatest enemy isn't the missile, it's the pressure. Chaos doesn't just come from outside, but from within the steel itself. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. And the chill only deepened. In that life or death moment, the UAVs hovered at 600 feet, blending in with seabirds and waves. Every blip on the radar became a deadly question. Harmless or carrying explosives? If the defense system miscalculated by just a few degrees, a real missile could tear through the flight deck. In that instant, a terrifying truth emerged. The enemy didn't need expensive weapons, just data, timing, and a level of cunning that sent a shiver down the spine. It didn't stop there. USS Truman was in maintenance mode, the moment when every fighter jet was still tucked inside the hangar. On deck were technicians, not pilots. A carrier that should have been a fortress had become an exposed target. The Houthis didn't strike blindly. They waited, watched, and hit when America was at its weakest. This wasn't a random volley. It was a calculated move. And now, the game was no longer played by the old rules. And something even more chilling has just happened to force once dismissed, as ragtag and insurgent has proven it can harness modern technology to strike at the heart of a superpower. The U.S. fleet remains physically untouched, but the message rang out like an alarm bell. This is no longer a war of battleships and bombsits, a war of sophistication, asymmetry, and attacks no one sees coming. And then the moment of retaliation arrived. Under the lingering dawn, USS Truman's command center transformed into the heartbeat of a survival symphony. Every siren, every sharp command became a rhythm in the chaos. The missiles were now just seconds from impact. The legendary Aegis combat system roared to life, storming with data from the escort ships. The crew no longer stared at screens. They were staring at the future, racing toward them like a scythe of death. What followed was a deadly dance of life and death, the massive CIWS weapon systems, known as the Last Sword, began to spin. Each 6-barrel cannon could fire 4,500 rounds per minute. No longer bullets, but a steel rainstorm. USS Gravely was the first to strike. Its Standard 2 missile screamed into the sky, obliterating the first target. A chilling reminder that here, every second is the edge between survival and annihilation, and every victory comes with a gasp for breath. The Red Sea, once a safe corridor, has become a high-risk battleground, not because of missiles, but because of the message. The U.S. no longer waits for allies. This shift brings both relief and anxiety to nations relying on American protection. Tel Aviv hails it as deterrence in action. Tokyo sees a strategic shield. But European diplomats voice concern beneath the praise. But enemy can't stay silent forever on Tehran. State media kept quiet. Yet experts noticed drone launches from Yemen had sharply dropped. The Houthis issued no statements. Their digital channels suddenly went dark. This silence wasn't pride, it was fear in disguise. Because in asymmetric warfare, true power isn't how many missiles you've fired, but in making your enemy believe you might strike again at any moment. But perhaps the most dramatic shift happened deep inside the ship, where sailors began to speak differently. Weapons hot was no longer just a drill command, but a real, visceral feeling. Rules of engagement became fluid. The radar wasn't just a device, it was a ticking time bomb. Every UAV on the horizon could be a camera or death with wings. And in that gray zone, alertness was no longer a choice, it was survival instinct. As the smoke from the crimson vortex continues to clear, the Middle East and the world is faced with three fateful crossroads. The first and most tenuous scenario: de-escalation through closed-door diplomacy. Oman and Qatar, the Gulf's quiet mediators, have begun to open secret channels of negotiation with Washington and the Houthis. If successful, the Houthis would halt missile deployments. The US would halt airstrikes. And the UN could open aid corridors to devastated areas like Sada and Houda. Neither side would declare victory, but at least civilians could sleep peacefully. The second scenario is the nightmare strategists fear most: escalation into a regional war. If Iran responds, whether indirectly through proxies like Hezbollah or through cyber warfare, the region could explode horizontally, from the Negev Desert to the Strait of Hormuz, from Djibouti to the Yemeni highlands. A stray missile hitting a major city could set off an uncontrolled spiral into which the US would be forced to deploy troops. And finally, there is the third scenario, the most insidious and persistent: a prolonged shadow war. No agreement, no peace, just drones, sabotage, and sporadic retaliation that continues indefinitely. War undeclared, but always lurking. In this scenario, the most vulnerable are not the gunmen, but the civilians caught in the crossfire. Crimson Vortex is more than a military operation. It is a statement about the new nature of modern warfare. In the age of satellites, artificial intelligence, and cyber warfare, victory is no longer about numbers of soldiers or tanks. It is about seeing the enemy before he knows he is being observed. Not a single American soldier has set foot on Yemeni soil. There is no need for occupation. There is no need to extend the front line. Just see, understand, and strike with precision. When hypersonic missiles hit a closed conference bunker, when electronic signals are cut like nerve pulling, when generals are killed without giving final orders, it is not just a blow. It is a warning to the entire hostile world. America does not need to invade to destroy. It only needs to know. And it knows everything, from who enters the room, who escorts whom, to when they sleep in which room. In the new type of warfare, information is firepower. After the operation, the Pentagon released satellite images naming each of the killed commanders, not to brag, but to sow deep doubt within the enemy. Who betrayed? Who was providing information? The real collapse came not from the bomb, but from the breakdown in trust. And that is the chilling message of modern warfare. You don't have to conquer, land to win. You just have to make the enemy doubt the people next to you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment so I know you stopped by.